Good morning and welcome back into another weekly segment of Talks with RJ. Yes, Talks with RJ. It is now 7 a.m. You know what time it is, but it is also time to have my weekly segment. I know things look a little different this week. We normally have a guest, but this week I just wanted to have some fun and talk some recaps of the SEC Media Days that took place in Atlanta, Georgia this past week. They had Media Days coverage from Monday through yesterday. A lot of great stories came out. A lot of great news came out. Even some interesting quotes and facts came out from all coaches. So this week we want to recap and talk about things that happened in the Media Days. But before we get started, just want to give you little quick facts about Media Days. For those of you who don't know, there are 16 teams in the SEC, with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma were added last year. So before that, it was only 14 teams. This year, it is starting last year, it was 16 teams with Texas and Oklahoma being added. Media Days are also known as the unofficial start of college football, which is very fun and interesting because at Media Days you have media, but you have players, you have coaches, have different representatives from different colleges and universities there within the SEC. And as you may know, the SEC slogan is "It just means more," and it literally just means more. But three teams I want to take a look and recap are Texas, Auburn, and Georgia. And we're going to get started with Texas. So this year, Texas had Michael Taft represented there. He's a senior out of Texas, and he plays defensive back. And they also had Anthony Hill. He's a junior linebacker out of Denton, Texas. And you know they have to have the quarterback there, Archie Manning. He's a sophomore out of New Orleans, Louisiana. But some key things I noticed from Texas was obviously they're under leadership under Steve Sarkisian. And Steve Sarkisian led them last year on a record of 13-3, had a really great, fantastic year. I mean, you play for the SEC championship, obviously you lose, but then you go into the semifinals. You lose to defend the national championship, which is Ohio State. But they had a really great year. And Steve Sarkisian talked about how deep the defense will be this year, which is very good and very great because he raved about in order to win games, you have a great offense, but you also really need a great defense. Sark also mentioned the importance of staff continuity for coordinators. He quoted, "We have had turnover in position coaches, but we also had the same offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special team coordinator, and same head coach for 5 straight years now." That is always important and key when you're trying to build a good team, because when you don't have all those turnovers and different staffs, that is really good. I mean, it helps you build a relationship with your team, your players, your coaches, and everybody. And one thing that Sark also talked about was how Archie Manning has earned the right to be quarterback. Most of the time, you don't hear coaches talk about that this early in the year because you don't want your players or you don't want anybody to get comfortable and stop working hard. But he bragged about how good he has got. And one thing I picked up about this media day from Texas was how humbled Archie Manning is. You know, he played a lot last year, but he still raves and talks about how he hasn't done anything yet. You know, that is very key because most of the time when you become a quarterback, you think you've done a great job because most of the time when you become a quarterback, you think you have earned the right to do anything. But this guy is so humble. And I had a chance to watch Media Day this year. I watched a little bit ins and out working, obviously, but one thing that was really stuck out to me was when the media was talking to Steve Sarkisian, you see most of the media members start going to the table that Archie Manning was going to be talking to the media, and that was really good because, I mean, that shows that they want to talk to him, get some great information, but this guy is very humble and I think he's going to have a great year. I also think Texas is going to have a great year as well, and that's things I took away from Texas. And my next team I want to talk about was Auburn University. Yeah, that's right, Auburn University. And last year they had a 5-7 record. As you know, in the SEC, that's kind of unacceptable. But Hugh Freeze talks about how he wants to get back to a winning, successful season. And the players they had represented this year were Jackson Arnold. He was a junior. He's a quarterback out of Denton, Texas. Connor Liu, a junior. He's an offensive lineman out of Kennesaw, Georgia. And you also had Keldrick Falk. He's a junior defensive end from Highland Home, Alabama. But some key things I took away from Auburn was this is obviously Coach Hugh Freeze. He's headed into year 3. They went 5-7 last year, obviously. But one question that a reporter asked Hugh was asked about their roster and improvements because, last year they didn't have a really great successful year. And that's one thing they want to get back to on the Plains this year. And Hugh, one of the reporters asked him, well, Hugh, can you talk about the roster and improvements? He quotes, "You win close games, and I truly believe in the playoff run we're going to be in the discussion because I love this team." And I thought, wow, that was a very loud statement because if you're an Auburn fan, that's something you want to see. As an Auburn fan, that's something you want to see. You want to see your team get back to being successful. You want to see your team get to a bowl game, possibly college football playoffs, and eventually want to play for a national championship. So I thought that was a very bold and loud statement for Hugh Freeze. As you know, Auburn also just signed a new deal with Nike, and that was very important. And Hugh Freeze had on some Nike shoes at the media days there in Atlanta, Georgia, and he said he was thankful to be a part of Nike, but he also mentioned he wore Nike shoes to celebrate their new partnership. So I thought that was pretty interesting and pretty cool. But if you're an Auburn fan, you want to see your team get back to that winning team culture down on the Plains. You want to see your team try to be successful in every way you can. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the University of Alabama right there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. 3 players that they had represented this year was Tim Keenan. He's a redshirt sophomore right here out of Birmingham, Alabama. And then you have Deontay Lawson. He's also he's a sophomore. A redshirt senior out of Mobile, Alabama. And then you also have Caden Proctor. He's a junior out of Iowa. And Coach DeBoer, he really talked about some key interesting things that I really liked about this his opening statement, his presser. And I would say Alabama had a 9-4 record last year. Alabama, we've kind of got used to that standard where even you had 9-4 record. Some people may think that's a winning season, but at Alabama, that's kind of unacceptable. So, we want to get back to some things. But some key things that he talked about how there was no turnover in staff, which is really important because continuity build relationships and trust and etc. And that's very key because when you have the same training staff, the same strength and conditioning staff, weight room staff, all that is very important. But he also was asked about the addition of Ryan Grubb, and I think that Ryan Grubb is going to be really good to the staff. We've seen what he done when him and Coach DeBoer has coached together a long time, and he also coached Michael Penix there at the University of Washington. He coached the NFL last year. But Coach DeBoer was asked about the standard for last year. He responded, "No, we fell short to the playoffs." And it's as simple as that. As I stated earlier, that's very key because at Alabama, if you're not in the college football playoffs and you're definitely not playing in January, that's kind of a disappointment there at the University of Alabama because the standard is set so high. But a lot of things that he also mentioned was everybody want to know about the quarterback situation. We have Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, we have Keelan Russell. But Coach DeBoer mentioned Ty has been a leader and stuck out. He also quotes, "Ty can throw a catchable ball." And people want to know about Austin Mack. Austin Mack, this guy's he obviously came with them from Washington. He quoted, "This guy is 6'6", 235, and has a presence about him." So we will be very interested to see how the quarterback battle continues to go down in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. But he also keeps mentioning that if Alabama starts a game tomorrow, that Ty Simpson will be the starting quarterback. That really makes sense because this young man has stuck with the program for a few years, has sat behind some of the great quarterbacks and have learned a few lessons. And also one interesting thing that I thought was very key from Tim Keenan, he talked about how he uses NIL money to donate money back to churches. And that's really key because, NIL, that's a big thing in college athletics this past year and since 2021 since it has been eligible. And Tim Keenan really talked and braved about how he donates his money back to NIL, to churches, and I thought that was a very important thing. Great young man out of Birmingham, Alabama. Also, Caden Proctor, he talked about how, he's from Iowa, and one thing I thought was very interesting and very funny was he owns 170 bottles of cologne, but his narrative was that big men are just sloppy and lazy, don't smell good. He said, I got to switch this thing up. We can smell good too. We can also look good too. So those were some very interesting things that I took away from SEC Media Days this year there in Atlanta, Georgia. And this will wrap up Talks with RJ. Hope to see you again next week. Same place, same time. Stay tuned for more Daybreak.